So have you ever found yourself wondering what the cloud really is? Like, for real? Well, you're in exactly the right place. Over the next few minutes, we're going to take our very first step into this whole digital universe, and we'll be using Microsoft Azure as our guide. This is going to be a quick foundational tour, so buckle up and let's jump right in.
So let's start with the big question. What is the cloud? I mean, you hear that term thrown around all the time, but what does it actually mean? It sounds super complex, maybe a little mysterious, but honestly, the main idea behind it is way simpler than you might think. Let's pull back the curtain. You know, at its core, the cloud is really just a huge shift in how we think about computers. It's all about moving away from the old-school model of buying and maintaining your own physical servers and hardware to a brand new one, just renting that computing power from someone else.
And this slide? This gets right to the heart of why that's such a game changer for businesses. See, the old way, over on the left, was all about what we call capital expenditure, or CapEx. You had to sink a massive amount of cash up front to buy servers, build data centers, and if you needed more power, it was a slow, really expensive process. But the cloud, on the right, flips that whole model. It's all operational expenditure, or OpEx. You just pay for what you use, kind of like your electric bill. And if you need to scale up or down, you can do it in minutes. It's just so much faster, way more flexible, and from a financial standpoint, a whole lot smarter.
This new way of doing things also brings some serious technical firepower. For instance, high availability means your app can stay online even if a server somewhere has a bad day. Scalability? That means you can handle a huge, sudden flood of traffic, say during a Black Friday sale, without crashing. Elasticity is kind of like scalability's cooler, smarter cousin. It automatically adds or removes resources based on what you need, so you're never paying for power you aren't using. And of course, reliability just gives you that peace of mind that the whole system is built on a rock-solid, dependable foundation. Okay, so you're sold on renting instead of owning. Awesome. But now you've got a choice. How much of the work do you want the cloud provider to handle for you? And to understand this, we're going to use probably the best analogy in all of tech, pizza as a service. Seriously.
This table just lays it out perfectly. Let's start on the far left with Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS. Here, the cloud provider gives you the basic building blocks, the servers, the storage, the networking. You handle everything else. This is like making a pizza totally from scratch at home. You buy the ingredients, you make the dough, you do it all. Now, in the middle, we've got Platform as a Service, or PaaS. Here, the provider handles the hardware and the operating system. You just bring your app and your data. This is like ordering a pizza for delivery. And finally, all the way on the right is Software as a Service, or SaaS. The provider manages literally everything. You just use the software. This is like going out to a restaurant for pizza. And honestly, it's what most of us use every single day with things like Microsoft 365 or Google Docs.
So, where does all this stuff actually run? Well, you've got three main options. The public cloud is when you use the massive global infrastructure of a provider like Azure. A private cloud is where a company builds its very own cloud-like setup in its own data center, giving them total control. And, as you might guess, a hybrid cloud is just a mix of both. You connect your private cloud to the public one to get the best of both worlds.
All right, now let's zoom in and focus specifically on Microsoft Azure. To really get a handle on it, you need to understand how it's all put together, both physically around the globe and logically in your account. So first, let's look at the physical map. Azure is made up of hundreds of data centers scattered all over the planet. These data centers are clustered into something called availability zones. A good way to think of it is like having multiple separate data centers within the same city. They're close, but they're isolated from each other in case of a disaster like a fire or a flood. Then, a group of these availability zones makes up a region. This massive global footprint is exactly how you get your apps running close to your users and make sure they stay online no matter what.
Okay, so that's the physical world. Now for the logical map. To even start using Azure, you need a subscription. Just think of this as your main account. It's where all the billing gets tracked. Now, if you're a big company, you'll probably have lots of subscriptions, so you can bundle them together into management groups. This is like having a master account that lets you apply rules and controls across the entire organization, all from one central spot.
And this right here is the final crucial piece of the organizational puzzle. Everything you build in Azure, whether it's a virtual machine, a database, whatever, it's called a resource. And here's the rule. Every single resource must live inside a resource group.
The easiest way to think of this is like a folder. It's just a logical container for all the different parts that make up a single project or application. This is absolutely key to keeping everything nice and organized.
So, what can you actually build with all this stuff? Well, the sky's pretty much the limit, but it all starts with a few core building blocks. Compute services, like virtual machines, are what give you the raw processing power to run your code. This is your server in the cloud ready to go. Networking services, like virtual networks, let you create your own secure, private corner of the cloud, connecting all your resources together safely. And storage services, well, they provide a home for all your data, whether it's files, databases, or backups. These are the fundamental tools you'll use to bring your ideas to life. Now, building cool things is the fun part, right? But it's only half the battle. To really use the cloud well, you have to manage it. And that means thinking hard about security, setting some rules, and keeping an eye on your costs. You know, the locks and the wallets of your new cloud kingdom.
Okay, this is probably the single most important security concept you need to understand. It's called the shared responsibility model, and it's basically a partnership. Microsoft takes on the responsibility for the security of the cloud. That means the physical data centers, the servers, the network itself. But you are responsible for the security in the cloud. That's your data, managing who gets access, and making sure all your services are configured correctly.
So how do you handle your side of that deal? Well, you don't just rely on one thing. You use a layered strategy called defense in depth. You start at the outside layer with identity and access, controlling who can even log in and what they're allowed to do. Then you add another layer with network controls, like firewalls. Then you secure the application itself. And finally, you protect the data at the very core with things like encryption. You see, each layer backs up the others, which creates a system that's way, way more secure. Beyond just security, you need governance. This is all about maintaining control and preventing total chaos. I mean, how do you stop a developer from accidentally spinning up a ridiculously expensive server and leaving it running all weekend? You use Azure Policy. It lets you create rules that automatically enforce your company's standards. And you use tags, which are just simple labels, to organize everything so you can easily see who owns what and how much it's costing.
Wow. We have covered a ton of ground, and we've moved incredibly fast, from the simple idea of the cloud all the way to managing a global setup. This is the foundation, and this is where your real journey truly begins.
So let's just take a breath and recap what you now really understand. You get the why, that huge financial shift from CapEx to OpEx. You get the what, the different service models from making your own pizza to dining out. You get the where, how Azure is structured physically around the world and logically in your account. And you get the how, the core ideas of managing security, governance, and costs. You've officially got the map to this new world.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. The cloud isn't just some tech topic for IT departments. It is the engine that powers nearly all of modern innovation. It's behind everything from the game you play on your phone to the medical research that is literally saving lives. You now understand the fundamentals of how this incredible engine works, so the only real question left is, what are you going to build with it?